5:33, 11, 12, 19, oops. Okay. Let's see, consent agenda. Has anybody looked at the previous minutes? The only question I had on the previous minutes is that there's that one, and maybe this is a clarification. There was that one part where I recused myself, and in the minutes it just says I abstained. Should it say I recused?
You can make that correction.
Yeah, that's what I was
You
wondering.
didn't vote on it.
I didn't, so that would be the abstained part. I just didn't know if you needed to clarify if it was a recusal or just me not voting.
Point to the
Sure.
time.
It was on, hold on, where did I read it?
I remember it, I just don't remember what.
Yep, it
Oh, I
was,
see it.
you see it?
6:55
6:55,
under Beth's.
under Beth's, yeah.
Would you like it if we said Rico recused from the conversation and abstained from the vote?
Yes, I think so.
And which?
It's under the 6:55 minutes under Beth O'Brien.
And how do you want it?
I want it Rico recused from conversation and abstained from vote. Because it just looks like I didn't vote and it was more than that.
Recused from conversation and
Yeah.
abstained from vote.
I
I
can.
could have walked around. Excuse me. Thanks. How are you? How are you?
Good. So, do you want a few more minutes or are you good to vote? Okay. And on the, do you want to vote on the policies as well? Or do you want to go through any of those? Okay, let me go through. No? Okay. So if I have a motion to accept the previous minutes and the policies.
Make the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Who made the motion, sorry?
Amy did. Okay, so, do we need an agenda reprioritization? Okay. So we're going to go now to the recognition of visitors. And
So I want to take an opportunity to introduce you to Patrick Ledoux from BSAC. He's going to be presenting some interesting data for us. He and I spoke recently about this data, and I know he was just at the BSA conference and he was sharing this information with other superintendents as well. So I think you'll find this interesting too. Patrick and I think this has been scheduled for maybe 3 months at this point. It's been a while.
Right,
Since we did it, so thank you for braving the weather and coming to
Oh, it was an easy drive, no problem. I'm a Franklin County boy, so it's easy.
okay.
Thanks for having me. I would welcome, if it's okay, a quick introduction and just roles, so I know who I'm speaking with. That'd be great.
Joseph Donneran, principal here, Enosburg Falls High.
Kelly D, Richford Elementary School.
Michelle Boucher, Enosburg Elementary School.
Rick Bartholomew, school board member.
Amy Irish, school board member.
Polly Rico, school board member.
Pam Hazen, school board member.
Beth O'Brien, principal of Richford Junior Senior High School.
Morgan Daybell, business manager.
Rachel Reynolds, middle school principal.
Amanda Blaney, note taker.
And then we have Kevin Blaney on the computer somewhere.
It's cyberspace.
Yeah, exactly,
Beautiful.
also a board member.
Great.
He's right here. He's right here.
Oh, there he is. Beautiful. That's
I
great.
think it sounds.
Gets me ready for my Zoom class in a couple days where I have like 30 people on the Zoom chat. So thank you for having me. I appreciate that. I've got, I think we got like 20 minutes set aside for this. So I'm gonna cherry pick a few of my slides because I've got way more than 20 minutes worth of stuff to talk about. But what I'm gonna do is slide through a couple of slides here on the slide deck, kind of touch on a few things. If you really wanna know more about something, just stop me and I'll slow down a little bit. But toward the end of the slide deck, we've got some specific data about your schools, which is really the kind of the core of what we wanna talk about, I think, a little bit. But some of the prior stuff is good backdrop for what that data means and how we get that data. So if that sounds good, I'll get started. Excuse my back as I carefully turn here. So we talked about this a little bit. What are the goals here today? So we'll talk about some of the challenges facing Vermont and some of the initiatives that we're doing that'll look at some of your data in particular. So this slide is really just trying to represent that VSAC does a lot of work with our partners across the state. So we do some work kind of independently, but it's really never truly independent because we work with the partners within our high schools, the partners within the middle schools, the partners within our colleges, the partners within AOE. We work with philanthropies, and then we work with the federal Department of Education as well through federal grants to work across the state of Vermont. So there's very little that we kind of do independently. We sometimes feel like we're in a vacuum working with some of our students, but that's never really the case. We wouldn't have students to work with if we weren't working with the principals and the school counselors across the entire state. And we wouldn't be doing our job effectively if we didn't kind of knit our work in to the schools that are doing such great work already. You'll notice on the bottom, we've got school boards and superintendents. That's something that we haven't delved deeply into. We've been pretty involved with the superintendents at some level. I was on a school board for myself for a little while, so that kind of piqued my interest about how do we make sure the people that are kind of leading these organizations, whether that be through kind of the policy piece on the school board members or in the schools, how do we get some of our data into their hands so they at least can see it, chew on it, and decide if they want to take action on those things or not. So that's kind of what we're doing here today. We also have a lot of work that we do with adult learners across the state. That's important for one of our new programs that I'll touch on in a second, but we do kind of school counseling across the state. We're in most middle schools and high schools in the state of Vermont, and our goal there is really to work with students to kind of raise their aspiration rates a little bit if they have their aspirations rate set too low, but really just work with them and figure out, so what's the right career path for you, and how do we find the education or training and the financing that can go with that to get you into that career or that education program that you're gonna feel fulfilled at. So that's really what we do. And then we do that with adults too. So one of the things that our state is challenged by, as you all know, is that we don't have enough workers in some cases, and we don't have the right training. So there's like 60,000 Vermonters right now that are adults that have some college credential in their background, but no degree to go with that. So they're kind of stymied to get to that job that a lot of the employers would love them to have. So we work with Vermont adults across the state to kind of work on that as well. So this is just a slide that talks about all the different services at a high level that we do. A lot of grant programs, a lot of scholarship programs. Of course, we do have a loan program for those people that really need those supports. But we kind of defer to the federal loan program as much as we can, just because there's entitlements that you can get there that you can't get locally. If you're in a situation after that where you still need loans, we encourage you to shop around as best you can. We have some of the lowest rates in the country, frankly, but we really want to push those entitlement programs first. We also run the Vermont Higher Education Investment Plan, which we really push people to use. We've seen a lot of growth in that in the last few years. That's a great program because in that situation, obviously interest works in your favor as opposed to the opposite way when you have a loan. So we push that a lot. The state and local challenges that I want to touch on, this is probably not news to any of you. 48% of working age Vermonters have a degree or some kind of credential, so that's a low number. We know the jobs are constantly changing. What we say now is the kids that we're teaching in middle school right now, we don't really even know what job we're preparing them for. The jobs are changing so quickly. So we're all the educators that we talk to say, we're teaching them how to learn as much as we are teaching them content because the world is changing at such a hyper rate. We know that all the jobs are evolving in that degree. By the 11th grade, students eligible for free and reduced lunch, this is a big number, not just this school obviously, achieve proficiency in math at a rate that's 27% lower than their higher income peers. So there's some challenges in that. We know math is a gateway to post-secondary for lots of students. It really is an indicator about whether or not they're going to be successful or not. And we've got some innovative programs there, believe it or not, that are helping that as well. And Richford is actually very involved in one of those programs. So you guys are one of the innovators in that regard. I'm going to spend just a second on this one. This is a kind of a compelling slide. This represents 12 students from the class of 2012. So we've been doing a longitudinal study with the class of 2012 across the entire state of Vermont to see what's happening with that class. So if there's 10 students that we pulled out, 9 of them at some point in their middle school and high school career said, I'm gonna go on to some kind of education after high school. They said that clearly. And then as a senior, that number drops to 7. So we went from 9 to 7 through that education cycle. And then actually enrolling in the fall of 2012 at a 2 or 4 year, that number drops again to 6. Persistence into the fall of the next year, so that did they stay? That number drops again to just over 5. And then degree attainment after 4 years in a bachelor's program drops again to 3.5 or so. So you can see this is just kind of a really challenging slide. There's lots of kind of stuff to talk about on this one slide. One of the things that we focus on a lot at VSAC, how do we help them really, especially if they get to this space where they're aspiring as a senior and then they enroll, how do we make this number much the same? Because we do not want kids dropping off with student loan debt and not having that degree at the end. And so we've got an innovative program that we call Guide, where we actually stick with the students that we counsel in schools in their first year of college. And we've only been doing that program for a couple of years, so we have another year or so until we have that kind of really meaningful data, but early indicators show that we're gonna make a huge difference in helping those kids sustain in those programs and really be successful and not kind of drop out with student debt and no credit. So we're excited about that program. This is a bunch of other things that we, if we have time, we would talk about, but I wanna be sensitive to this, so I'm gonna cover, we have slides on all these, but I'm gonna cover a couple of them really quickly. It's FAFSA season, so FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. We're trying to encourage as many students to fill that out as possible. Even those that are on the edge, we really want them to try to fill it out, because if they're on the edge and they're not sure, if they see the federal Pell Grant that they might get, and if they fill out the grant application, they see they might get money from VSAC, that might put them over the edge a little bit, say, okay, I can afford to do this, it won't not strap me that much. Pricing is such a big challenge for students. Dual enrollment in early college, again, Richford was part of the program that we did for 3 years with the McClure Fund to really kind of inspire more kids to take dual enrollment courses. We saw really, really good numbers, and we'll touch on that one in a second. Career and College Pathways is the events that we do every single year. Richford again participates, so does Enosburg. That's a program where we bring students across the state together in 4 different locations on college campuses and talk about college, talk about training programs, talk about workforce programs, talk about all the paperwork that you have to navigate to get into any of those positions or in those academic sort of places. A couple years ago, we had, that number was declining year over year, who was coming. So we worked with schools, Enosburg-Richford were 2 of them across the state. We worked with all the schools and we said, let's switch this from a weekend event where we're kind of inviting parents to join us with their kids. And let's move it to a weekday event. And let's bus kids in. We'll try to have a robust program. And we doubled the number of students, we more than doubled the number of students that we had. We doubled the total participant rate. And then we extended that program into the evening. So a lot of schools bus kids in for the morning program. We go through a bunch of workshops. We talk about financial aid, we talk about essay writing, we talk about SATs. They can do lots of things. They can take a college tour in most cases if they want to. And then they go back, maybe do some more work on career and college planning back in their school. And then we reset up for adult learners across the state. So we leverage that whole day for education across the entire spectrum of youth and adults. And so that program is really building steam across the state. And parents and students that don't come during the day can also come at night, because a lot of the same content is applicable. So we bring them back. Essential Math, I think you guys are fully aware of the Essential Math program. Richford is deeply involved in that, and that's really helping to kind of tackle that math program. That's a program where high school educators, faculty at the post-secondary level, AOE, with some support from VSAC, have come together and created a course that we call EMC Squared. Students are taking that course. We just had this beautiful news article where students are saying, I didn't think I liked math, but now I like them and doing this math. And it guarantees them that they don't have to take remedial coursework at the college level if they move on. And we know that is, for so many, especially low-income kids, a real death nail in their journey. So they get to that college level, they thought they made it, and then they're told they have to take a remedial coursework, which means no college credit, but you pay the same rate. So more debt and no credit. And so that deters them from sticking it out. So this guarantees they don't have to do that. It's really powerful. And we hope if that's successful, we're gonna start looking at other programs, not just financial literacy, but reading, writing, those types of things. Career and Education Wellness. This is another one of our relatively new innovative programs. It's only been around for 2.5 years. I'm gonna spend just 1 minute on this one. So we talked about the challenges of the state. We talked about all the stuff that we're doing to help students across the state. There are still so much more needs. So we have 3 federal grants, 1 for adults and 2 for students. Both of them are in play here, both Talent Search and Gear Up. We work with these 2 schools. But there's so many more students, middle income or lower income, that we can't connect with and help and navigate this whole journey. We don't have the fund to do it, we can't hire enough people. So just like schools, we're strapped. So we said, well, what innovative way can we do this? So we reached out to businesses and we said, we have all this work that we've been doing with adults and students across the entire state. What if we took it and repackaged it into a different kind of workshop and we brought it into your place of business? And we were able to kind of help your employees, especially if they need some education or training to get into those jobs that you need them to do. And we helped educate them about education, so they can navigate their school system better. They can understand flexible pathways, dual enrollment, proficiency-based learning, PLPs, all that stuff, because we're gonna bring that knowledge to them while they're at lunch, and we're gonna do a workshop for them. And so we've got 4 employers right now that are doing that. We've got just under 2,000 employees in the state of Vermont that have access to this program, where we can come in and we cover everything from early learning, what to do before your child is even old enough to go to school, all the way through loan repayment and everything in between. And we really just talk about is education about education. How do we help parents navigate the system for themselves or for their families? And so we see this growing and growing and growing, and it's one more way we can partner with all of you, helping to help the parents who are sometimes such a struggle to get the information to and to have a conversation with. And now we're expanding that a little bit because we do the workshops, and in certain situations, we'll do a workshop and then we'll make our staff available for 30-minute one-on-one counseling. So if a parent has a question about early college or dual enrollment or their own loan payments, they can sit with our counselor in a private for 30 minutes and we can walk them through that whole process. We don't necessarily know how each individual school does each of the little programs like dual enrollment, early college, but we know enough to explain to them how the whole system works, and then we send them back to all of you to kind of go through the details. So that's a really empowering program. So let me stop there for just a second before I jump into the data that we have for you guys and see if there's any questions on all that I just rattled off pretty fast. Okay. All right. This is our FAFSA stuff. We talked about that. We do have some scholarships, so people that are applying for the FAFSAs, if they on Instagram or Twitter that they did it, they go to a raffle for a $50 gift card. We also have some $1,000 scholarships just for applying, just for filling out your FAFSA, you're on a scholarship. We talked about the dual enrollment. Again, early, for lower income kids, they want to take a dual enrollment course and they have some cost, fees, or travel. They can get a $150 check to cover those costs. So to try to equalize out that for those that are lower income. We use that money every single year. We got an additional allotment this year so that we can fund more students. Again, free and reduced lunch, and they have to have costs. This is the dual enrollment early college work that we did in Franklin County with your 2 schools. We talked about that. We have some learnings coming out of that. All the counselors that worked with us kind of sat with us and debriefed. We really thought in some cases taking adult tech ed courses, which dual enrollment does not fund, might be an opportunity for some students, and that might be something we want the legislature to look at as far as funding that, not traditional dual enrollment. So that was a nice experience for us to learn, because we were able to use non-state money to kind of fund those courses and then see success, so we can report that back. Class fees at the college level are kind of a hidden cost. So a lower income kid said, oh, this is free. Well, it's not really free. There's a fee here, there's a fee there, and so those things are gotchas that we need to work on. And then the time and the oversight needed by school counselors in many of the schools was a burden as well. And that's something that the system that AOE administers, we want them to look at. We talked about this. Here are the dates for college pathways. I'm assuming St. Mike's or NVU Linden might be the right spot for you guys. I think the save the dates went out quite a while ago to all the schools for those, so hopefully the right people in these schools have those, but you'll see more communications coming out soon. We talked about early essential math. There's the wellness program, some of you know Vermont Precision Tools. That's one of our newest that's using this program. Whoa. All right, we'll just jump to the data. Okay, so we track a couple different things and we track them in different ways. So we have county level data, which is on this slide right now, we'll talk about. we do senior surveys every 2 years. So just about every senior in the state of Vermont graduating from high school fills out one of our surveys. Some of them are electronic and some are paper. We have about 90% of all high school seniors that actually fill it out, so we've got a lot of data there. And plus we work with the grant system, so we know who's applying for the grant. So we have some data on lower income students and what they're receiving and where they're going. Same thing with scholarships. And then our Gear Up and our Talent Search school counselors who work with students collect data about what they're doing with those students so we can report that back. So we have all these different data sources. And when you fill out a FAFSA in Vermont, VSAC, because we're the state grant administrator, we get that FAFSA record. So we have data all over the place and we try to use that to kind of see what's going on. And so if you're really into research around education, if you go to VSAC's website, we have a research section of our website where we produce white papers and research papers that talk about what's going on. So some of the funding that we've received in the state of Vermont, expansion to the non-degree grant program, the expansion of the funding, the stipend for early college, and even some aspiration work that the state is now funding for the first time, really have been kind of triggered by some of this research through all this data that we have generated. So county data, so this is obviously the entire county. So 917 grant recipients in that June 2018 through July of 2019. So $1,500,000 went to students in Franklin County under the Vermont State Grant Program. And 76% of those students stayed in state. And that's about what the average in the state of Vermont is. So some counties are a little bit higher, some are a little bit lower, but 76 is the average. So people in Franklin County that are going on, most of them are staying in Vermont to do that. We administer a lot of scholarships at VSAC. Some are publicly funded, some are private funders. They just said, I want to do some good, here's their criteria, and we manage that application process for them. In Franklin County, we distributed 243 for almost $400,000. That's 3% up for Franklin County compared to the prior year. We didn't see a bump of 3% in total dollars, so that's just a little bit more that goes to Franklin County than did the prior year. Vermont Higher Education Investment, again, people are saving for college with that program and getting some interest and also getting a tax credit, by the way. Franklin County, this is really nice, 7% increase in accounts from the prior year. So that's a nice bump in the number of accounts. People are saving intentionally, which is really a positive sign. 60% of students would be their first generation. So the statewide average is 44. So that's interesting that Franklin County is a little bit higher than the statewide average. Obviously it's lower than Chittenden County, but higher than the statewide average. And then 290 students last year attended our College Pathways event, which is all about learning about training and education after high school.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The VHEIP,
Yeah.
that's the 529?
That's-
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm interested because I just found out about that like maybe 6 months ago.
Okay.
I wonder what kind of like public relations around that or, advertising.
Yeah.
I feel like there's not a lot.
Well, again, we're not profit.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But
'Cause I
you'd be
was like,
surprised,
oh,
there's,
this
we
is
spent
an
a lot
option.
of time and money trying to market that program.
Yeah.
I mean, so, Vermont Digger, we're always putting ads on Vermont Digger about
Okay.
it. We've done a lot of advertising on VPR. I really don't have all the marketing pieces of that, that's
Yeah.
under a different area at VSAC, but we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to make that as aware as possible for people across
I
the
wonder if you
state.
could like push into school systems, because when you think about schools and the amount of people that they employ,
Yeah,
that might be, and
Yeah.
VSAC's walking into schools anyway. That
absolutely.
might be,
My accountant,
Yeah.
Mike Vans, and
Yeah.
my financial planner, both of them said to do it, and so I don't know how we would have paid for college for 2 kids without it.
right?
And you get a tax credit.
No, exactly.
I've never
I
gotten
had
money
just-
back on my Vermont state taxes until we did the 529
Yeah,
plan.
I just heard about it on the news.
About it for us.
But I think that accountants will often tell you to do it. It's a
Yeah,
very smart
And-
financial
and no, for
move.
sure, but I'm
Yeah.
just thinking there might be a huge
Yeah.
percentage of people that might not have, they might not
Yeah.
have the accountant, but.
It's a
um,
great, it's a
it's a
big
great
challenge,
program,
right?
yeah.
And especially within a school system, there's so much things coming in, people are trying to get to go out
Yeah.
the door to students and families and
Yeah,
employees, it's a tough one to solve. And we can also set people up to do payroll deduction as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
So that's
Yeah.
one thing we try to do with both
I
businesses
was-
and schools, let their employees do that, so.
yeah. Like I said, I found out about 6 months ago. I was
Yeah.
like, where did this come
It is.
from?
It's a
It's a
great
great
program.
idea. Okay, thank you.
All right, so this is for the 18-19 post-secondary, the students that probably graduated in 2018 and went on to the 18-19 post-secondary. So Richford, we had 22 grant applications. We awarded 21 of those, so again, it's a good idea to apply. If 22 people apply and 21 get something, it's, especially the grant application for VSAC, it's like 2 pages long, it's really simple. So that was $30,000. Richford, we had a scholarship application, which was $2,000, and then in Enosburg, we had 53 grant applications, 40 were awarded, $50,000 again. So in total, between just grants and scholarships, those two schools, students from those schools received $88,000 in that prior year. The 1920, the total's still pending because we do it in 2 disbursements for the first and second semester. So it's likely those numbers will double right now. But again, if people change schools, drop out, don't continue, those numbers all kind of change. But in general, that's what's happening right now. Again, a lot of grant applications going through, which is great to see. So VSAC counseling, so the talent search and the Gear Up counselors that work in our schools. Enosburg is a talent search, so we have 2 federal grants that work with students. One provides really direct counseling services, and that's all it really does. That's the one called Talent Search. The Gear Up one is a little bit broader. It allows us to do some scholarship dollars as well as counseling. We've had 2 models in Gear Up. One was a cohort where we kind of adopt the entire class or the entire school, and some were just caseloads. So we'd get a set number of kids that we would work with. The Talent Search is always a set number of kids that we would work with. Okay, so those are the 2 different models. The Gear Up program also allows us to fund programs that move the ball forward for students or move the system forward in some ways that benefit students. So we'll see that in a second. Well, actually it's on here too. So in Enosburg, about 47 students in this academic year are being served. Post-secondary enrollment over the past 6 years has been 79% for the caseload that we work with. So for the VSAC counselor that's working with their set of kids, about 47 or 50 so per year. About 80% of those kids go on to some kind of post-secondary education and training. And that's about 50%, statewide when you look at that. So that's a nice increase if that's the goal. We also supported 7 students that went to the Governor's Institute of Vermont, and that last year, or went to some MedQuest, which is kind of so both residential programs, week-long programs to kind of delve deeply into different ideas. And those are things that we can help fund with some of our funding. In Richford, we saw about 70 students. The Gear Up grant, and that's the one that was cohort, so the post-secondary rate would match whatever the entire school was in that case, so nothing really different there. That model is moving more to our caseload because we know it's much more effective if we can do it that way, so that's changing. But this is also the grant where we can fund other things, so the math and STEM support homework assist that we did in Richford, ACT funding, Explore and Plan, college and career field trips we've done, so we spent about $70,000 to fund programs within that school through that Gear Up grant. So that's been positive as well. And then we also helped 9 different students go to Governor's Institute and MedQuest. So those are kind of really coming through those 2 federal grants, helping out as much as we can there. All right, so now we're getting into a little bit of the FAFSA data and then some of your own students reporting. So free application for federal student aid, Enosburg class of 2018, 49 out of 91 people filled it out, or 50% or so. Not a big change in the class of 2019. We'd like to see that higher, but that's fine. Richford, we saw kind of a significant drop off, and the thing I'm always thoughtful about with a school of that size is that things can change pretty dramatically percentage-wise year over year, but the classes are small. So there might be something to look at there, but there might not be. So that's something to chew on, I think, a little bit there to see that drop from 54 to 38%. Sometimes it's just a friend group that kind of influences people and things change a little bit. But this chart on the right side, so this is when we do our senior survey, we ask a question, when did you first receive information about education after high school? And so the reason I put this one up here is, so this first column is Vermont. This is when we see it. So just under 20% said they first received information about education after high school in 6th grade, a little bit in 7th grade, and so on and so forth. And this blue line is 9th grade. And by 9th grade, 60% of the students have received some information. They self-report about that. So the only thing that was a little bit odd was Enosburg is a little bit below that trend, right? We're not quite at 60% by 9th grade, and Richford is a little bit higher than 60%. So that's not dramatic changes, but there's a little something there to look at. We love to see this orange one and these gray ones as wide as we can get them, because we think if we can start talking to students a little bit, not pressuring them, but just start talking to them, and then just keep that conversation going so they don't put it away, it's gonna be more powerful. So we love it when we see those bottom ones wide and the top ones narrow. And I've got paper copies of all this, but I'll leave you as well, so you can kind of process some of this. When I decided to not continue my education, so that's an interesting question. So when you're career bound, so in part of the senior survey at one point, you already said, I'm going into career right now, I'm not going into any more education. So we asked a question under that section, when did you decide you were never gonna continue your education? We always see this bubble here, which always bothers me, but it's in 6th grade, about 10% of the state says, I knew in 6th grade I wasn't gonna go to education after high school. And so that in my mind is probably like, I always knew I was never gonna go, I'm not going, and that's that. But then we normally see this trend right here, just right up there, as you go through the grades and you get a little older, you start making decisions. So when you look at, this is data from, I think, 2010 through 2016 averaged out over those years. So you'll notice if we average out Enosburg and Richford, just like we did Vermont, you see some interesting little trends here. So we've got this 10th grade, you've got a substantially bigger group here in 10th grade that said, I've decided I'm not going. And then in Richford, that happens in 9th grade. That number gets a little bit higher. So that's just a little bit of a difference between the statewide trend and what's happening in these two schools.
And what years was this?
This is average data over about 2010 to 2016. So what I did here, because that was intriguing to me, so here is Enosburg's data broken out from 2010 to 2018, not 16. And so, again, the numbers are small in some of your schools, so this is what it looks like each year. So you don't have there's not a lot of consistency. It's not like we can look back at this one and say, you do that every single year. It is very unique year over year. It doesn't really follow any particular pattern. So I don't know what that means, but I was like, well, that's interesting. So I'm gonna show you guys that.
So have you broken that data down anymore, by
2016,
gender
like,
or
oh my
income
God.
or?
I have not yet, but that's exactly what I would probably do next, is say, okay, so how does that break down next? And you kind of have some of that data in summary form, but we could definitely take a look at that in gender as well. In 1st generation, 2nd generation, to see if we can figure that out. And then this is the same thing for Richford. So I thought that was something maybe to chew on there. And then this is a completion of Algebra 2. Again, this is all self-reported. These are what students are filling out in these forms or filling out electronically. It's not necessarily accurate. So this is completion of Algebra 2 or Integrated Math 3 or equivalent. So we know that that's a pretty big indicator about going to be successful or going to continue on to some kind of education. Statewide, which is that blue bar, kind of navigates between 80 and 85%, somewhere in there over this. And this is 2010 through 2018 again. So Enosburg reports a range. It's a bigger jump up and down, so that's interesting to me. But again, some of the school sizes is a little bit interesting, and sometimes things happen within the school where we rename classes, and that might be telling something there. But Richford seems almost very consistently heading into a certain direction there. That starting in 2012 when they started answering that question through now, or 2018, we've got a fairly clear slope downward. So that's something to ponder a little bit about what might be happening there.
I can tell you.
Oh, there we go.
One of the things is a lot of kids don't really see the value in Algebra 2. And there are some kids that are not going to college that didn't have a solid base. And so we were providing a different math class that was more like applied math on what you would need for
Gotcha.
career versus college. And EMC squared is helping. Some of the kids are taking EMC squared instead of Algebra 2 because the way that it's being taught is, the pedagogy behind it is very solid and it helps kids understand.
That's right. Yeah, good. And it's a good reminder for me because as we go out with the next survey that I think is going to be due next year, we're going to want to modify this question to make sure that if they're taking EMC squared, we get them to answer this question with data that we can help
Exactly.
track that. That's great. aspirations and continuation rate, again, so we asked, you saw that slide earlier, we talked to people about aspirations, did you ever think you were gonna go, do you think you're gonna go? And then we track continuation rate as well. So statewide, we see an aspiration rate of about 75% and a continuation of around 61%. So it's about a 14% slide, so end of the senior year, before graduation, I'm telling you in my survey I'm gonna go. We check to see if you went, you didn't, 14% of people fall off, right? So that number goes from 75 to 61. So when I looked at Richford and Enosburg's data, there's just a bigger drop off, that what we call melt. So that melt in 2014, for example, in Enosburg, 58%, it dropped to 34 that actually continues, that's 23% drop off. We've seen 20 and 27 over here. And in 2016, very small, only 7% people said that didn't actually continue even after they said they were going to. So again, I don't have a lot of answers on that. The piece that I am a little bit suspect on this one is the question of 2-year versus 4-year. On this statewide average, you know, we're about to break down the 4-year versus 2-year. So those that said they were going to a 4-year, those that said they were going to a 2-year, and then what's the melt in both of those buckets. I think intuitively we know the melt's gonna be bigger in the 2-year. Those that said they were going to 2-year, less of them actually go on than the ones that said they were going to 4-year. And I'm suspecting, and I don't know this yet, that in Enosburg and Richford, you might have a higher percentage of people that are going to 2-year. And so that melt is probably because we know that 2-year is sometimes almost placating us. Yes, I'm going to this 2-year school, and they don't actually follow through.
So does this take into account students who switch schools? Do
Yes.
you so you are,
This is really just
they're
continuation, not
counted-
persistence.
okay, because sometimes you would lose track, or it's
Yeah.
hard to keep track of them if they transfer schools.
Right.
But
Right,
you-
on that longer term, did they complete in 4 years, that kind of stuff, that's where we have to really deal with that. This is
Yeah.
really just, did they enroll
Did they enroll?
Yeah.
Somewhere,
somewhere?
not necessarily in the same school.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's where I wanted to end.
Great.
I don't know how long I took, but.
That was very good. Any questions? Well, thank you very much. That was
Great.
super informative.
Good. I've got a couple of my business cards I'll leave and a couple other flyers around a couple of those programs I mentioned if you wanna walk out. And I've got a stack of the presentations I'll leave as well.
Great,
And obviously you can go through Lynn if you want me to come back, if you have something else you wanna dig into, happy to do that.
great.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
Thanks
so
guys,
much.
take care, have a great night.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
You want me to hook up, Miss Rachel?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Do
Up to you if you wanna do that now while she's.
Okay, why don't we do that now while Rachel's getting ready? So, due to Kevin being remote, for the consent agenda, we should do a roll call vote instead of an all in favor. So, do you still wanna make a motion to approve the minutes? Okay, so Amy makes the
I'll make that
motion. All in favor, so Kevin, are you in favor?
Yes.
Okay.
Pam? Yes.
Yes. And yes, okay,
Thank you.
yes.
Amanda, do you know what just happened?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
But I don't need to do anything differently, right? I just said all
You
ayes.
could say all
You can say
eyes,
roll
roll call,
Yeah.
okay.
So each month I'm bringing you a principal to share a school spotlight. And last month, we get to go down, we get to hear from a couple of people at Richford High School about all the great things they're doing with STEM, some robotics as well. And then we get to go do the tour down to the wood shop. So this month, it is Rachel Reynolds, and she's gonna be telling us about Enosburg Middle School. She has a video presentation. Hoping that you can see that, Kevin. Can you see the board?
So just you and the presentation.
Whoops, I see why. We'll fix it.
If we can get on email.
I bet you can see Amy and Polly. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
There we go. Oh, she's sharing her screen. You're really gonna get to see.
What do I do now, Morgan?
Click join meeting.
Oh,
Dang. Hi, Kevin.
Then you
Oh,
probably
this
have
is
to
very
turn off your mic.
echoey.
And
By the
then
way,
click the
better
present
start
button
with
on the bottom right,
Kevin, are you looking at
do
yourself?
this.
over to the right, the other right.
What's this called?
Your entire screen or a window?
Your entire screen. And then click that window.
This
Middle,
one?
yep. And then share. And then,
You are presenting
yep,
your
you
screen.
got it.
Rachel, will these work?
Yeah.
And now you can go back to your screen.
Oh, okay. I think I just plug it into this little thing. And it plugs into there. Okay, so I made a video to share with you guys tonight. And what I tried to do is compile like kind of what life at Enosburg Middle School is like, and some videos of like learning that's going on in classrooms, some photos and things of like different events and activities we've done as a school. But I also realized I don't ever do a very good job of selling myself and the role I play in a lot of this work. And so what I also compiled is, so what you're gonna see is evidence of like student learning and things going on in the school. I was trying to keep it short, but once kids found out I was coming around with a camera, they were like, now videotape me doing this. And so then it got really long and then I had to try to cut it back. So it's about 10 minutes long, but I wanted just to share, and this is not a complete list, but just like behind the scenes, a lot of work goes into creating a school that has kind of the successful learning outcomes that we're seeing on SBACs, significant decreases in discipline. I believe in October and September we had 11 write-ups total. So so a lot of work goes into building a school and a system over the past few years I've been here. So I just tried to compile some of that stuff that I do intentionally with staff and as an instructional leader to kind of build some of the things you're gonna see. So you're gonna see students talking about their learning and sharing things, but that stuff doesn't happen without leadership and supportive teachers building that intentional practice in classrooms. So this is me kind of showing like the things that you don't see in this video is the in-service work and the TLC work and the collaborative work we do in lesson sharing and observing one another and looking at student data, designing instruction to fill gaps, designing instruction to double dose and reteach students so that they get caught up and enrich and differentiate. So that's all stuff that I'm kind of building behind the scenes so that when you see a video like this, which is hopefully good, of course now that I'm about to show it, I'm like, oh no, it's probably awful. But that you'll know that like a lot of stuff goes into that. So I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of some of the things, and of course once I handed it out, I was like, oh, there's more. I'm not good at that anyway, so. So let's try and see if this works. Are these on, Amanda?
I plugged them in, I don't know that I turned them on.
Let's see what happens. Why is I'm missing the. Should just.
Okay, so, the coat of arms project was inspired from a Edgar Allan Poe story. What Montessori's coat of arms is, and it was a golden foot with a serpent wrapped around it, biting it, and the Latin phrase was something like we cannot resolve without impunity or something like that, which means that if you insults me, you are going, like, I'm going to get revenge, and you won't really know it. And so that's that is dramatic irony for us because we know what Montessori is going to do to Fortunato, and that's pretty much following the family coat of arms. And so, like, we kind of wanted to make a coat of arms to for our own families and what that all means. And
And tell me what skill you're practicing here.
Skill. Oh yeah, the symbolism.
Okay.
And
So tell me about the symbols you chose.
I chose heart for loving family. This was supposed to be a hot pink rose, but it didn't turn out to be good. So
I think it's beautiful.
the hot pink rose means how do I say that word? Generously and loving and caring. And then the thumbs up means we like give each other like
positive encouragement.
yeah, positive encouragement if we do something good. And the house means we have a warm home.
Awesome.
What do all the colors mean?
The
Or did
colors
you
in the
not really-
background mean like our favorite colors and like I just did a whole rainbow because we all like a lot of colors.
And what's your Latin phrase?
We love each other.
That's awesome. What about the writing piece? What will you do when you're done with your coat of arms?
So the writing piece, so after I get done with my coat of arms, I'm going to go through and break down each section and what it means, like all the colors. So for example, say I pick like orange. Orange is like happiness and caring. And so say I have orange in the background for a lot of things because our family is really caring. Then it would be, I'd write an essay about what that means to me, how that plays into my coat of arms, what it means on my coat of arms.
Awesome.
And yeah, there's stuff like that.
Thank you, guys.
So, what we're doing is like we're making a ramp and we're gonna send a bowling ball, a softball, and a golf ball down it. And our prediction is that the bowling ball is gonna go the farthest because it has the most mass and it will carry itself farther. And the golf ball will go the least far because it has the least mass. And then we're just gonna send them down one at a time. And then we're going to graph it on this graph. Trial 1, the mass 1 is the golf ball. The mass 2 is softball, and mass 3 is the bowling ball. And then we're gonna be doing 3 trials for it. And we're gonna find out the average time, average speed, and final speed, and the acceleration.
We're gonna hot glue these, and then we're gonna stick these, so basically like a skateboard.
Okay.
And then,
What will you do with it?
we're gonna put kilograms in it. So yeah, weight, and then the more faster it goes, the speed the weight.
So do you think it's gonna go faster with more weight or less weight?
Yeah, the more mass, the more faster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is important.
So I'm gonna be kicking a soccer ball, and we're gonna measure the acceleration. I don't know what we're gonna.
The force and the acceleration.
And how are you gonna measure that?
We don't know yet.
What do you think, Jaden?
I think we're gonna measure it with, he's gonna kick it medium as hard as he can and lightly, and then I think we're gonna use we're gonna measure the distance with a tape measure.
And also we're gonna time it with phone.
So we're starting with the giant lettuce group. So tell me what you did to make your plant be so successful and how you changed and adjusted your design.
We like originally had a really bad system, and then we changed it and it grew bigger.
Okay, what did you have before?
A really unstable, thin lettuce plant thing.
And what was the design that wasn't working?
2 cups and a thing of water.
Yeah.
So we made a wicking system at the beginning of the year for our lettuce plants because we're planning on having a salad party, and my design has changed. We all did design changes. We were trying to make our plant survive.
How did you change your design?
It was originally in a milk jug, and then I put it in a cup.
Why did you do that?
Because the milk jug wasn't working. It's either the plant was getting overwatered or not enough.
Okay. Cool. Tell me about yours, Charlotte.
It's dead.
Why?
Because we switched to a sock and we put only cocoa pebbles in, and it was really big and it was healthy, but now it's dead and shriveled.
They all say cocoa pebbles, they're rocks. They look like cocoa pebbles, they're not actually cocoa pebbles. That's what they call it.
So our plant is dead.
Tell me what happened, Chelsea.
I didn't fill the water. I let it sit there without any water, so it's dead.
There it is.
And so we had we had a better working system, and then we changed it, and this happened. It's gone. There is no plant. And yeah.
What'd you learn?
I learned that sometimes you don't have to change anything. You just have to do it.
The plant.
Okay, so what's your design here? How is it getting water?
It gets water from the cup below through a sock.
Okay.
Very genius method, I know. Yeah. So that one always dies. This one's just kept alive, and we haven't really changed anything. We changed the growth medium so it was a solid singular pure growth medium.
What does that mean? Tell me what that means.
So we just have the right rocks instead of the weird sand mixed with white rocks that we had before, because somebody decided to mix them all together, and we were just like, yeah, that's the easiest one to grab, so we grabbed it. Then we added this cover to prevent algae, because
water plus
and then we made 2
for algae, but then we realized this was taking up more water, so this one didn't have water, so then we just made 2.
Yeah, that one's still
this
there.
one's still Timothy.
Poor Timothy. Does this one have a name?
Skillshare Kirby.
We were gonna have a lettuce party.
Not so much, huh?
There's still hope. Okay, wait, here comes the gender reveal.
We all are.
What's it gonna be?
Wait, I'm gonna look at Reynolds. Yeah.
What is it? It's a Should I stop sharing with him now?
You can stop sharing now.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
that was great, fun.
Does anyone else need the projector?
Okay, where are we at here? So, Lynn Coda.
Rachel, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was
Can you
great.
unmute yourself?
That was fun.
What's that?
Can you unmute that?
Okay, what?
Unmute it.
Unmute.
Yeah. When they were talking about math, that's why I always win with petitions.
And I mentioned in my write-up
Yeah.
that we do a PLC notebook. So a lot of our classrooms do interactive notebooks with students. So my teachers and I do them at our staff meetings. And if anyone wants to see a model, you can take a look. I use mine in a lot of ways to track, like, when I give teachers feedback, like what their goals are and like what they've noted, so I can come back to it. But if you want to see what's in my notebook, I'm happy to pass it.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, definitely.
Did I share my screen effectively with Kevin?
You did, but you have to take yourself off mute.
I did that. Oh, I see what you're talking about. Gotcha. Like social modeling learning. Do the theme, like the theme change. I'm not sure that's how there's a.
Rachel, with your PLCs, we were just talking about this, with your PLCs, does the theme of your PLC change?
Yeah.
Kids there? Yeah?
Yeah, so
Is that yours?
we have
Yeah,
I have a really small staff. I have no teachers technically I have like 2 math teachers, 2
Sure.
language arts teachers, but they either teach multiple grade levels or multiple contents. So a traditional PLC structure doesn't always work. Like you can't say like, okay, everybody who teaches, like everybody take this data from an assessment, because you're always gonna have either one subject being completely untouched or, so we have to do it a little bit differently. We do a lot of like collaborative things. So we take, for example, the responsibility for learning skill that we all assess and design common scoring tools, common assessment tools, like speaking and listening is another one we've done that with, and presentation skills where we're developing and assessing in some common ways on some skills that we all share and own because they belong in every content. So more of the transferable skills.
Gotcha.
But we also use it for our win time, which is our intervention. So we do a lot of work establishing what the needs are for students, like for reteaching and instruction. So we spent a lot of time this year mapping curriculums and then determining what skills need to be targeted at what time of year. So when the math teachers are doing a unit, it's gonna be heavy on fractions, and we've identified these 12 kids who are struggling with fractions. We get them the reteaching right before the unit, so that as soon as they need that skill, it's fresh in their mind and they've just had like targeted instruction on it for 5 weeks or so.
Nice.
So PLC can look a lot like that for us.
Sure.
Really great stuff happening here at the middle school. Thank you for sharing that. Put a lot of work into that video. It was very rewarding to see. It was awesome. And I got to see the outcome of the coat of arms project. I saw the introduction of it a few weeks ago, so it was nice to see that done. So I'm gonna jump in to my agenda. So I'll start with personnel. So I have a couple of retirement notifications that I'll ask the board to make motions on. The first is from an elementary teacher at Enosburg, Cecile Stebbins, who has been teaching here for a long time. She's had a really long, successful career over at Enosburg Elementary School. She would like to retire at the end of the 19-20 school year. Although you don't have to formally accept someone's retirement notification, it's always nice to do so and put something in your minutes. With regrets, potentially, or thanking for her service. So, if you would like to make that motion.
I will make the motion.
There you go. All in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, right. I always do this. Kevin, do you accept?
Can you repeat the motion?
Oh, the motion is to accept Cecile Stebbins' retirement, request for retirement. Yeah. At the end of the school year. Kevin, do you in favor, aye or nay?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Did he hear that? And now you have me echoing? Oh, you need to turn your speaker off.
I need to what?
The speakers that she had.
I unplugged and turned them off. They're not
Oh,
part
so it's
of it.
not feeding through that?
Can you hear you now on yours?
Well, I turned my sound off. Okay, Kevin,
Right.
they're asking you to do a roll call on accepting Cecile's retirement.
I don't think
Are you in favor?
He doesn't.
Can you do your sound, Morgan? You could do the roll call of the four
Okay,
people here.
Sure.
Pam.
Yes. Amy.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. So we have a quorum anyway.
Don't even need Kevin.
So we can't hear from Kevin for whatever reason, so maybe we can get back to him later. So the next retirement is a hard one. This is somebody who has worked in a variety of capacities in the Enosburg schools for a really long time, and has decided that this is the point, the time where she's ready to move on. So I have a letter from Michelle Lucier, effective at the end of this school year.
Wow.
So I know you all know this, like the work that Michelle has done at Enosburg Elementary School for the last, how many years, Michelle?
Well, this is my 15th year as principal there.
But you were there a long time.
12 years as a teacher.
Wow.
So she's made a profound impact on the community of Enosburg and a couple generations of kiddos at Enosburg Elementary School. So she's gonna leave behind some really big shoes to fill. But I'm personally happy for Michelle. I know she's excited about what's coming next for her, but we are certainly going to miss her.
Wow. I make the motion, we don't accept.
I was just gonna say, I'm going against this. I know, I think we tried this before. Yeah, I mean, congratulations, so sad. I mean, you've had an impact on all of our kids, but,
Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to talk to the staff today. I had a staff meeting.
Oh.
It's gonna come here, so hopefully tomorrow morning I can.
Okay. Good.
So that's code word for
For
don't share.
don't, yeah, I won't
She
post
really
it on
wants-
Facebook.
We tried to be thoughtful about the timing, and we know our friends at Northwest Access take a few days before they post these things, but Michelle really wanted to give this news to the board
Yeah, right.
personally, and she also wanted her staff to have the opportunity to hear it from her.
Right,
We
okay.
begin early in the year.
Right,
I don't want this to be an April thing where you've got to.
right,
But you've got a lot of time.
right.
There's some great people out there. There's some awesome things going on over there. Great people in that building
Yeah.
that just, they're rocking and rolling and and it's not an easy decision. It's just one of those things, even just watching Rachel's video just made me get a little teary. I'm like, oh, maybe.
You're gonna flip some houses.
I don't know, I think this is what the first one was.
Oh, I remember you saying that was what you wanted to do. Oh.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get that one moved on so we can try a different one next year. But
So do I have a motion to regrettably accept? I'll make the motion. Thank you. So do we have Kevin now or no?
Kevin, can you hear us?
I'm gonna just call him.
Okay. So Pam, do I have a vote? Yes. Amy? Yes. Rick? Yes. Kevin?
Hey, let me put you on speaker and see if that works.
Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Do you have a vote to accept Michelle Lushier's retirement request?
Do I have to?
I know, we've already been down this road.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Do you want to have him weigh in on Cecile's?
Oh, did you also want to make a vote about Cecile Stebbins?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Before I talk about timeline for Michelle's position, I just have one other thing under retirement. So last month I brought you Nikki Cribbs' request for effective, she had made a request effective January 3rd, and we made a motion, went up before the holidays. So I understand now why January 3rd. So part of Nikki's job is to support those seniors as they navigate through that January 1 deadline. So she has much work that she's planning to do to continue to support them through the holidays. So I think it does make sense for you to approve the January 3rd retirement date for Nikki. So she'll come back for a couple of days before she's officially done. So I would like you to kind of amend your previous motion.
And you had also mentioned that she does not take their insurance, so it wasn't going to be a big deal as far as the changeover.
Yeah.
Okay, so do I have a motion to amend Nikki Cribbs' retirement to January 3rd, 2020?
I'll make a motion.
Kevin, do you have a vote to amend Nikki Cribbs' retirement? Okay, Pam? Yes. Amy?
Yes.
And Rick, okay.
So, so back to Michelle's retirement, I think that, all positions in a school are incredibly important. I think the role of principal is really, really important. So we want to make sure that we hire somebody who's really strong that can continue on the great work that Michelle has been doing over at the elementary school. So I know it was hard for Michelle to kind of make this public so early in the year, but I admire Michelle's courage a lot because she cares so much about that school. She wants to make sure we hire somebody. So I would like to advertise for this position right away for the elementary school. We will, at your next meeting, I'm going to bring you back a timeline. I'll start gathering those applicants. We'll start thinking about what the committee will look like and what timeline we'll be seeking for this role. So the candidate pool is not enormous for principals. It's a tough job, and we have a teacher shortage. We know that, right? There's also principal leader shortage as well. So we want to get ahead of the hiring process. And Morgan and I went on, the days are blending together. I don't remember if that was today or yesterday, but there are already quite a few principal positions throughout the state that have been advertised, so we wanna get out there early. So, any questions on that timeline?
No.
Okay. I have nothing to report to you under student. I did have a request from the union, and the request really came right after your last board meeting. So this year, given the merge, there were additional collective bargaining units within our supervisory union. So the master agreement says that they have to submit payroll deduction authorizations for association dues to central office by October 15th. So I got the request just before that, and they asked for a 2-week deadline to November 1st, so we're already beyond that. But they did need the November 1st request, and all of the forms are in. So I would ask for a motion, and if the board is agreeable to the union request, this is a side letter that I created just outlining what the language is and what their ask was. So if you make a motion to approve that, we'll have Polly sign on your behalf.
What was the reason for the ask?
What's that?
What was the reason?
They had so many other units, like we'd never had a unit for Montgomery support staff, we never had a unit for Berkshire support staff. There were custodian units, there's food service units, so it was a lot of work for Todd to get into each of those schools and make sure they understood what the ask was about joining the union, so.
Okay.
I think it was a really reasonable request, given what his lift was this fall.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Kevin, did you hear what the motion was?
I get the exact motion.
Okay, so the motion is to extend the deadline, right, for submitting payroll deductions? Let's see, to extend the, pardon me?
In the bold is where you're.
Oh, the deadline for submitting payroll deduction authorizations for association dues for teachers new to the association is October 15th.
Extend that deadline to November 1st.
To November 1st. Oh, so it's not the bold. Okay. You led me astray. So the deadline for submitting payroll from October 15th to November 1st. Kevin, do you have a vote?
Aye.
Okay. Pam?
Yes.
Amy? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this month's board packet, I sent out an article for you to read. It was an equality, yes, it was equality and equity. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at that?
I don't think I got that.
It was a video, I think.
No, there are two things.
No.
Okay, well, the article's linked right here. It's something you could read after. The video is gonna get a similar message. It should have come in your packet, I apologize that that wasn't included. So, we'll go with the video. What we're about to do is we're about to embark on our first budget cycle, right, as a merged district. And your principals have been engaging in conversations around thinking about this larger entity, these 6 schools, in your new merged district. So the reality is each principal has kind of had their own domain before, and they've been able to look holistically at their budget in its entirety. So the difference now is that we're looking at this together. So we're trying to get at that notion and that idea of what's the difference between equality, right? Everybody gets the same, versus equity, where we're really trying to look at it through the lens of what's the need, and are we making sure that everybody gets what they need within our system. So this lens of equity is an important one for us to consider as we move forward, because we are definitely serving a population of students in these 2 towns, our new community, that have a lot of need. We're serving kids from diverse backgrounds that we definitely have high rates of poverty for the students that we're serving. So we have some needs that are more unique to these schools. So I want you to think about that equity lens as we do this work. The last thing I want you to think about before I show you the video is I just want to remind people around the goals of Act 46, why we ended up merged to begin with. And that was for schools throughout the state and our statewide funding system. We know we have an issue with spending in public education. We have ranges that vary from $13,000 per pupil to $23,000 per pupil across the state. So looking at efficiencies was one of the important pieces of the merge work. One of the things that we clearly heard back when we presented our case to the state board is we've done a good job with the efficiency. We're right down there when we look at per pupil spending in our state. We are some of the very lowest spending per pupil in the state, which if we're looking at it through the efficiency lens alone, we've done a great job of keeping those costs down. At the same time, we're serving a population of students that have pretty intensive needs. So there are two other pieces of Act 46 that we have to keep our eye on. And that's excellence, right? And equity. So it's important for us to remember that it is not just about cost savings. It's about ensuring that we're putting the things in place that our students need in order to be successful. Because the long-range goal, my long-range goal, and I hope this matches your long-range goal, is that we want to make sure that we provide opportunities for kids so that when they're ready to leave us, when we had Patrick here talking about what happens when kids graduate, what are their plans, are they going on to any kind of post-secondary or any kind of job training, we want to make sure that doors are open for them, no matter what their dream is. And in order to do that, we have to provide services and supports for kids who really need it. So we need to be mindful as we do this budgeting process that efficiency is one measure, equity and excellence are other measures. So I want to share with you, first, before I get to the video, this image. I was recently invited to attend Roland Conference by Joseph. He took a team from Enosburg High School, and this notion of equity certainly was embedded throughout the conference. And it's, if you're in public education, we have a lot of trainings throughout the state that are focused on equity, and you'll hear the legislators really focusing on equity in our state as well. So this is really the idea of, if we're looking at it through the lens of equality, right, everybody's trying to watch the game, right? Equality means that we give them all the same step, equal, right? But this kiddo here could already see the game, right? This kid still can't see the game. We gave him the same thing we gave the other kid, but he still can't see the game. Equity, on the other side, is looking through the lens of what each of those kids really need in order to be able to see the game. So this kiddo needs 2 of those stools to be able to have that same opportunity. The middle child needs 1, and the kid on the end, he could already see the game, so he didn't need a stool. The reality of what is happening in terms of privilege in our society is that there are some kids, and there's nothing wrong with these kids, I'm not trying to diminish for them, but some kids have a lot of opportunity, right? All these steps represent all the opportunity and the privilege that some of these kids have, so they're way up here. And there are some kids who are just barely able to see the game. And there are some kids that it's not that they can't even see the game, they're in a hole. Like, it's not that they're just missing the stool, they're in a hole. They can't see at all. So the goal of our work really is about how can we work towards equity, where another way to look at it is about liberation. So how can we remove what that barrier was to provide that opportunity for all kids? So I know this, for me, it speaks to me in terms of the lens of budgeting and vision, where we're going as an organization, and I hope that you're seeing the connection to some of the work that we're being tasked with doing. There's a video that I watched, and I feel like it's a very powerful video. There is one comment in it that I know some people find a little offensive, but I think that the power of the video itself is worth that. So I want you to just really listen to this, and the purpose for you listening to this video is about thinking about how this applies to your roles as board members and your roles as leaders within our system. So this is Race, Equity, and Equality. It's the name of the video. groups.
Turn yours in.
Oh, yeah. I see it now. Let me just stop it and go back though. Was that it?
Yeah.
Sound.
We'll take this. $100 bill.
Here.
Before I say go, I'm gonna make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you have access to a private education. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off. Take 2 steps forward if you never had to help mom or dad with the bills. Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability, you don't have to pay for college. Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. Has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I've said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people up here have a better opportunity to win this $100. Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start. But the reality is we have. Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life. That is a picture of life, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you've done has put you in the league that you're in right now. When I say go, on your mark, get set, go! If you didn't learn anything from this activity, you're a fool.
He talks about the people who were in the front of the race. Remember what he said about why they were there? Had they done anything to get themselves to that place? Not really, right? Like their life circumstance got them to that place. It's not their fault. I'm not sure why I'm still hearing. I also want to think about the kids who are in the back, right? Had they done anything to put themselves in that part of the race? It really it was their life circumstance that put them there. So we need to be thoughtful that our job is to make sure that we have high expectations for all kids and we're providing excellent opportunities for kids no matter where they are in the race. The reality is, if we are establishing what we want for all of our kids, we're going to have to provide some additional supports for those kids who are not starting in that same place. And that's what I want us to really think about as we're pushing through this budget process. There was a a second or two where it shows a clip when the race is just about to start and when he says go. Did anybody tune into what was happening in the back?
A lot of people decided not to even run.
Rachel said a lot of people decided not to even run, right? Because it's too far. They knew they weren't gonna make it anyway, right? So I think about some of that data that we saw from DSAC earlier when he was questioning like, why 6th grade? Some of these kids had already decided in 6th grade that college wasn't for them. Or training after school, after high school wasn't for them. Like, that's the stuff that I know we can do better with. And that's the stuff that we as leaders are really struggling with, and we're challenging one another to think differently. Because if we continue to do school the way we have always done school, we can expect that we're probably gonna continue to get the same outcome for those kids. And I know I definitely want more for all of our kids, and I know our leaders do too. I have no question that our leaders and our organization definitely want that. So, any other reactions? Does anybody want to say anything about the video or this conversation?
Did they show this in school?
What's that?
Did they show this in school?
I haven't shown this to the leaders yet.
Oh,
They're showing
really?
this for the first time,
Oh,
too.
because my daughter showed me this video. She's like,
Your daughter?
yeah, she's like, I look at this video, and so I assumed that she had seen it at school. But yeah, so it must have been in her hours of going through YouTube, but she latched onto it, so, yeah, so it spoke to her, yeah. So it would also be interesting for kids to understand the race, you know, that not everybody starts in the same spot.
Or even identifying our own privilege.
Right, exactly.
Like, all of us in this room have privilege.
Right.
For a variety of different reasons. And, you know, there are probably some of us that have been marginalized in some way in this room too, for a variety of reasons. So I think identifying our own privilege and identifying the ways that we maybe have been marginalized ourselves is an important part of the conversation, because I think that helps us to understand better how other people are being marginalized or how other people are using their privilege as well. Because we all look kind of alike in this room. And when you go to education conferences in the state of Vermont, we kind of all look alike. So it's our responsibility to recognize our privilege and make sure that we use that and make sure that we're thinking about the historically marginalized kids as well. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So I've set the stage, I hope well, for Morgan to talk about some of the budgeting work that we're gonna do. Your principals are gonna continue to do some work next week. They've already been doing some visioning work together to try to think about, you know, this is the system we currently have, how are we using our resources, what are some of the wishes we have, and what are some of the things that maybe we could work together on and collaborate on. We recognize that this is certainly this is a long-term plan. This isn't gonna be anything that's done in 1 year. We have many steps to take in this journey. But I wanna make sure that it is not through the deficit cutting only lens. It can't just be about efficiency as we move forward. So, Morgan, are you going to project?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Before I do that, most of my report is informational. But while I'm getting set up, you had asked me last month, since you only got one bid for plows, for plowing at Richford, to rebid that out. Coming around are 2 bids. It's the same one from Coombs that you saw last month. And then the Richford town did submit one the second time around. Is that?
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah.
We'll plow the parking lots today.
Yes, they did.
Yes.
They said they wouldn't leave us stranded.
Who said that?
The town, because We quite a bit of
We have-
snow up there.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Oh, go back, got it.
Is this? Kevin, I see now why the sound didn't work. Sorry.
No, historically, it's been down.
Kevin, do you still see my screen?
I'll just take it away from you. So historically, the town has been charging us 10,000 per building, so 20,000 total. And you have two bids in front of you.
Oh, Bibblesick Homes. So this one says 30.
Yeah.
Town.
Right, I was just looking at the back, the
Yeah.
breakdown, they both say homes, family, property, maintenance.
One's with and one's without sign.
Oh, got it, thank you.
Okay. In the past, has Richford done the sidewalks as well?
No,
No,
we've done
Jim.
our own, we've done our own, and it was $20,000, but the sidewalks, the custodians did.
The custodians did that. Okay. And Combs knows, so this bid that they're putting in, I see is broken down, but is the bid for all five? They know
They
that
had
it's-
originally bid for all five, and I told them that they did not get Enosburg.
Okay,
So it would just be for the.
so they know it would just be in for the Richford.
Yep.
Okay.
You're, by bid law, you're free to choose whichever one you want.
What's your conversation?
The town of Richford has historically done it.
Historically done.
Excuse me?
The town of Richford has historically done it. That's who's maintained it.
For 10,000 less than what they bid.
Right.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying, the bid went up $10,000.
Wow. What's the rationale behind that? Have they provided any?
I don't know, I'm just saying
They-
it tonight.
Were they just annoyed
Oh,
that
okay.
we?
Well, no, I called and they had said that, and whether, I don't know the validity of any of it, but, that they were losing money, that they had to hire a part-time person, in order to get the job done, but I'm not quite sure.
Just Kevin, you're looking for
You can see them.
Okay.
So, the pros.
Kevin trying to say something.
Oh, is Kevin? Is Kevin trying to?
Kevin, were you trying to say something?
No, I was thinking, I was gonna say something, I think. Like, how much time does it take for our custodians to do sidewalks?
They've always done them, quite a while. They get there early and they do the sidewalks and make sure there's egress around the building.
I'm just thinking.
Depends on how much snow there is.
Right. Right, I mean, it could be an hour one day, it could be 2 hours another day,
Right.
right?
Right.
Sidewalk, you know, if it's worth $1,000 or $6,000 to have somebody else do it, free up their time.
Well, we bought the tractor last year, remember?
Oh, yeah.
So we didn't, in the past, Gary Shover had used his own pickup and plowed, certain places at the elementary school, more at the high school, because there's more sidewalk there. But last year we bought the tractor, and, there is a snow blower that's used at the elementary school.
But not the high school.
We bought a tractor. There's a lot of place at the high school that was not done.
Oh, right,
Not a
so when you
sidewalk.
said it's used at the elementary school, but it's used at the high school too?
No, it's used at the high school. The tractor's at the high school,
Oh,
there's a snow blower.
Snow
that they
blower,
use at the
I
elementary
got you,
school.
okay.
And you feel like they've sufficiently been able to maintain that?
They do, they've always done a nice job with it, yes.
Coombs was the one that submitted it last time, right?
Coombs, yep.
Yes, it's the same bid.
So. Thoughts?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Does anybody wanna, do you wanna talk about this?
Now, you said you talked to who, Polly? You talked to one of the select board?
Correct, and yes.
So are they saying that they had to spend $10,000
I don't,
for an additional person? I mean,
I have no idea.
Yeah.
They basically just said that that's why they hadn't in the first place, because it wasn't cost effective for them.
that's why they hadn't bid in the first place?
That's
So-
But, I mean, in the same sense as when you figure out what is cost effective, but, right. So we could go cheaper, cheapest, or status quo. Thoughts?
Go ahead. What's your thought?
I say we go with Coombs Family Property Maintenance.
Because it's cheaper.
And it sounds like the town hasn't sufficiently done the work in the past. We've had to buy pieces to maintain some of those.
To do the sidewalk, they
Yeah.
weren't,
They
weren't
were
expected
never
to
in
do. The
charge.
sidewalks and the front walk, they
So I
weren't
don't think
expected to do.
That wasn't part of it.
No, that wasn't part of it.
So I don't think Coombs should
Do that either.
do that
Right.
either.
Right.
What is the, on the town of Richford, it says paragraph number 5 and the scope of services would be excluded. What is that?
I believe that in the bid documents we put out some pretty specific, language around what would trigger plowing.
Mm-hmm.
And they are proposing that, they would do it in the way that has been done in the past, which we didn't actually have anything written down for. And so, I believe they would just not plow when it's an inch or less accumulated.
Okay.
Actually, that's a good point. What did, Coombs, did you have any agreement on what to plow and when to plow?
He
That
did
kind of
not
stuff.
propose any changes to what we put out, other than, he wanted it clear that because they hadn't been doing sidewalks at either building, that he wasn't gonna do that.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the language.
Any more thoughts, conversation?
I mean, ideally, it would be nice to stay with Richford since they've been doing it. But $5,000 is $5,000, I don't know.
Right. Kevin, thoughts?
Similar to Sam,
Okay.
I think, staying with the town, we know what and how they do it.
Right.
But we put it out to bid to create competition. to get multiple bids. Unfortunately, we only got two, but, if we can save money, I think we can save money.
Okay. So having that discussion, entertain a motion, go with Combs,
Yep, go with Combs
okay, so
for 25,000 without sidewalks.
25,000 without sidewalks. Rick, do I have a vote?
Yes.
Amy? Yes. Pam?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Here you have it. Okay.
So before I pass around your budget, I'm gonna show you guys some stuff that we've been looking at in central office, and we presented as well at the NMV meeting. As part of the, the unification, I think there were some conversations, maybe more so on the other side, about some real misperceptions about what was going on in schools that they hadn't had any experience with. Perceptions of they have more of this or more of that. And so we started to do a pretty deep dive with the principals about who's all in their building and comparing that to the number of students. And so presented it there and just wanted to present it to you guys before we get into the budget. What you're seeing up there first off is enrollment figures by each school. I'm just gonna scroll over to pre-K total, K-12 total, and then the full total in your buildings here. So you'll see, not surprising, Cold Hollow has the fewest number of students at 52. Enosburg, Middle High combined has the highest at 422. But I'll just let you look at those for a minute in case there are any surprises for folks looking at another school for the first time.
Right.
Do you need to be bigger?
I might.
I'm struggling, I'm trying to, the old glasses.
Does that help?
As much as it should.
Right, okay.
I'm getting LASIK on Friday, what's your excuse?
Okay, and so there's a total of Richford junior, senior, 236. Okay. And Enosburg 422, okay. So the 267 and the 192 is included with the pre-K, correct? Yes, it would be. I'm no mathematician, but it is, okay. Okay.
I just want to point something out. I recently was doing some work around pre-K stuff in the SU, and you have 93 kids in pre-K between Enosburg and Richford. We used to have a cap in our supervisory union of kids in preschool programs. For all of our towns, I think it was like 76. So we're serving more just in these two towns than we used to be able to serve in the entire supervisory union. So I think that's incredible.
So good on that. We have also looked at adults, and part of this is me going through the budget and wanting to make sure that I've captured everybody. Try to shrink this up a little bit.
Oh, let me write this down.
It's not gonna work. Since Nate's not here, I'm not gonna look at Cold Hollow. So broken them up by grade for classroom teachers in the elementary school. Specials would be art, music, things like that. And then secondary, ELA, humanities, math, and science. These are folks that tend to be in your budget. We're also trying to capture people in your building who are not in your budget. So special educators and SLPs, school psychologists, and then we get into interventionists and coaches, which in some cases are in your local budget and some cases are grant funded. Library, we go into early ed, and then some of the student supports, so nurses, tech intervention, guidance, substance abuse professionals, homeschool coordinators, administrators. We're getting some of the NCSS services, so CAT workers, autism workers, school-based clinicians, school-based behavior consultants.
How's that for acronyms, Rick?
Yeah.
I know how much you love them.
They're the best.
Paraeducators, they're not split by special ed, regular ed, but they're split by people who are generally one-on-one versus general paras, triple E paras. Clerical people down to SROs, athletic directors, and custodian staff. Eventually we'll get food service in there as well. So we're trying to look pretty deeply at this. I think even as the year goes on, we're gonna be tweaking it as people are hired or shifted around. But we've gone through this as a group, and I think it's pretty close to accurate of what's reflected in your building right now. One of the things we did from there is to look at a student per adult ratio. This is broken up by licensed staff, so that would include teachers, special educators, licensed administrators. Non-licensed would be primarily your paraeducators and custodians.
Okay.
And then contracted are primarily your NCSS services, so CAT workers, autism workers. So you'll see at Cold Hollow there are 4.95 licensed educators or 4.95 students per licensed educator. I've got the middle and high schools grayed out because I'm not confident that I've gotten a breakdown between them. There's a lot of staff that share between 6 and 8 and 9 through 12, but it's there. But I would focus on the high school, high school as a total, and then junior high school as a total.
Now, did the state ever shift their ratio formula from student staff to teacher student, or no? Or, I mean by remember they were doing like the recommended, did they, and it was.
So I thought that's where you were going.
Yeah.
That has not gone anywhere. Anyone who's old enough to remember Challenges for Change knows that stuff that's half-baked can actually move pretty quickly through Montpelier when it gets to May or June. So the Scott administration have been talking about trying to get everyone to 5 students per adult. They've never been able to decide who's gonna be counted in the adult category, so it's kind of just always died on the vine.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that it's not gonna come back, but just for, because that's out there, we looked at what would need to happen in order to get to a 5-to-1 ratio. And so this column here would be how many staff you would need to cut if they came down and said, we're not funding more than 5-to-1 and we're starting it next year.
Right.
Again, we don't think that's gonna happen, but you can kind of see what it would take to get there.
Yeah. Okay.
So the non-licensed would probably be like paras, custodians, things like that, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the paras, almost all of the paras are driven by IEPs and like almost all of mine are.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're all
So
practices.
so that number, so what's contracted?
CAT workers, autism workers,
Counselors,
school-based consultants.
school-based clinicians,
People
okay.
who are not on our payroll,
Okay,
are in your building.
okay.
Yeah, so really there's a lot of kind of back and forth between contracted and non-licensed. Maybe
Right.
you're moving someone down from a CAT worker to a para, or from a para to a CAT worker.
Right.
And that's gonna
But a
switch
lot
that.
of a lot of those numbers are driven by how many kids you have on IEPs and what their IEPs say.
And what their needs are.
And what,
Right.
that's what I mean, what their needs are.
So this is, the reason we're showing you this is
For
not,
contracted.
As
From
a,
the
Just
contract.
comparatively.
Yeah.
yeah, we're showing you this not because we think it's a good idea to look at your budget this way or at your
Right,
staffing
no, I know.
levels this way, but the intention is to show you how if we make an arbitrary decision of if that is something that comes out of Montpelier, and we make an arbitrary decision and we think about equity and we think about the kids that we're serving, can you imagine if we cut the staffing that we had to that level? How would we be doing with the equity and the excellence piece?
right, and I mean, if you have a student that requires a BI or requires an autism worker or who requires support from a paraeducator in a small group, I mean, we don't have paraeducators in classes where there are IEP needs for that, which means that a lot of the classes are supported. You know, we aren't gonna be following what the IEPs say.
Well, that's the shift, is that moving away from the one-on-one standard kind of IEP
Right.
accommodation to more kind of intervention.
I know, but we're hoping that, and I think it is changing,
Right.
the, what was in Montpelier, their funding wasn't even legal, because schools like CVU were going to get more money
Right.
than, at North Country, Enosburg, and Richford,
Yeah.
where the poverty levels and the number of kids in IEPs is much greater. It was based upon the number of kids in the school, not your needs.
Right.
It was
Are you talking about the weighting,
the 172,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there's a
173.
weighting study that's not out yet, should be out in the next couple of weeks, that's gonna, I think it's gonna provide greater clarity
Yes.
about what the recommendations to the legislature are gonna be, about how they're recommending
Right.
the weighting formula is going to look. And I had last week at the VSA conference, I had, although they weren't allowed to give us tips, we had a conversation about how they did the weighting study. So I get the sense that poverty is going to be a strong factor in there, because they definitely
Because we
were
fought the fight.
talking,
It
they were
wasn't going to
talking through
be.
the lens of equity. So I think that it's important to note that when I was saying about the arbitrary cuts, we are trying to get to a place, like Polly said, where we're moving to where we have licensed people working with our neediest children. But we have to build that system before we strip away some of those services. So building that system where we have the capacity to be supporting through specialized services and programs and interventions within each of our buildings, so that we can start to reduce some of those other supports that are in place. And arbitrary cuts are not gonna get us there. Strategic thinking and really looking at, what are the systems of supports we have for all learners, whether they have academic or behavioral or social emotional needs, what are we doing to support them? And then that allows us to think differently around the types of supports that end up getting put in place in IEP meetings. Because if there are other services that you can offer besides a one-on-one, we'd be less likely to be offering the one-on-one in those IEP meetings. So that's the work of the principals, is really digging in and looking at those systems of supports within their buildings. And we're doing quite a lot of work on that this year as a leadership team, and we've been working on this for a while, but I feel like we're doing some more intensive and deliberate thinking around this year.
Any other questions on that?
Nope. Oh, can you send me, that, and this will become clear why I'm asking in a little bit, the one prior with the enrollment totals? That, do you mind sending me that at some point?
Actually, Morgan, can you send it all to me?
Yeah, I'd like to poke through those numbers because I can barely see them, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, so last week at NMV, I passed out, I think, a 40-page budget, and it was late in the meeting, and everyone's eyes immediately glazed over, and there was no discussion after that. So this is a kind of more condensed version coming around to you. It is only, it's only gonna include lines that normally have your staff attached to them, so I'm not bringing you stuff like tuition payments, I'm not bringing you supplies, the professional development stuff yet. We're really just gonna, again, focus on people. It is broken up by school. Kevin, I sent you a copy, but I'm also gonna put it up on the screen if you'd rather look at it that way.
Yeah, I guess.
And so I'm just gonna walk you through it and kind of point out the changes primarily in people. And this first cut is really, there's not any bold initiatives yet. It's really what a maintenance budget would look like, primarily from what you've got in your building today. I'm projecting that out to next year. So Enosburg Elementary is, starts on page 1.
Does it say that somewhere?
It says it once it recaps it on page 3, but I don't have any header yet.
Oh, okay, so that's E, okay.
So you'll have to trust me.
I will.
So you'll see the third line in there, looks like it went up from 0 FTE to 0.5 FTE. That is actually an SU paid position that we have always billed back to Enosburg Town School District and now ERU. What I'm trying to do is, since we are doing that data dive with all the adults in your building in the spreadsheet we looked at before, I'm trying to capture some of these people that actually have FTEs. So that's, it's not a new position, it's just that we're accounting for it a little bit differently.
Okay.
You will see that line to line, paraeducators and the percent of their time between special ed and regular ed, and early ed and K-12 ed, tends to shift throughout the year. So I'm not gonna worry too much about those changes. In terms of teachers at the elementary school, you'll see that big line, the $1 million line towards the bottom of page 1. It looks like it's going from 22.17 FTE to 23.37. The teachers who make that up there's 16.9 in both the current year and next year. So in Michelle's budget, there are no new additional teachers. That slight increase is that budget to budget, we are moving more paraeducator time out of special ed into regular ed. And then just below, 2 lines below that, you'll see a line that goes from 0 to 3 FTE. Again, that those are contracted services. Those 3 are actually all NCSS workers.
Can we go back 1 second, Morgan? So I think that under salary direct instruction, what I heard you say is that that's not just teachers, so it's still
correct
the same amount of teachers, but you've shifted some portion of paraeducators who are doing non-special ed services, they're supporting general education into this budget, so that makes up the difference of the 1 point.
Yes.
Okay.
You got it.
And the contracted service, even though it would be funded out of special ed, because I think that those workers are usually, if the kids are on an IEP, funded out of the special ed budget, you're gonna show that in revenue later on?
Those workers usually are, if they're funded as special ed, they're not gonna be in this budget.
Okay, so these are
This would be
regular
kids.
ed, regular ed BIs, or regular ed, okay,
504 ed.
okay, yep.
Page 2, you'll see we're gonna go through guidance, health, library, principal's office, and plants, all right in a row, and no changes to staff in any of those.
Okay.
At some point, and we can do this at the end of the meeting if you want details, but you're negotiating with your paras, you're negotiating with your teachers, you're negotiating with a lot of your administrators. And those salaries, certainly for teachers and paras, aren't gonna be set until this budget is warned. I think I have enough money in there. If you wanna kind of talk about my assumptions in executive session, I will. I don't wanna screw up negotiations. We are also expecting in the next 2 or 3 days to be able to see the 2 best and final offers from the School Boards Association and the NEA on what everybody's healthcare is gonna look like. So when that comes out, I will make sure that we're budgeting either for the most likely scenario or the worst scenario. And so the benefits numbers may change between now and the next time you see it, just from that.
Okay.
On page 3, we'll get to the end of the elementary school.
Oh, yeah.
So again, Taz, in there, on that first line, I haven't really spent a lot of time getting coach salaries in there yet, but they're not people we attach to an FTE. So halfway down, you'll see that it looks on paper that you're going from 41.03 FTE to 44.4 FTE. Those changes are a very slight reduction in the number of paraeducators in the budget. I think we cut less than a day a week out of one person. So that's the only change to staff that you pay for. And then there's an increase in 3.5 of those contracted folks who have been in your buildings all along.
Right.
But now we're assigning an FTE to them. Does that kind of make sense? Because that's probably the easiest one to follow of the 4 or 5.
Oh, great. Let the games begin. Super.
So, middle of page 3 starts Enosburg Middle High School. Again, if you, that first line, if you take out the paraeducators, there was actually a drop of 0.7, which was an FTE that we had sitting in the budget for the middle school for an interventionist. 0.5 of that is being paid out of grants, and 0.2 of that is being billed back 4 lines down. You'll see that other purchase service line.
And shared with Richford's.
And right, and Richard is the other half of that person. You will also see a 1.0 in there, and that is a school-based consultant. Generally, we've not had that person in your budget because we've been able to use EPSDT money to cover them. And so as I dig in a little deeper on that line item will probably drop. I just haven't had a chance to look and predict how much of that you're gonna be able to pay out of grants.
Okay.
So that's just a mission, Morgan.
Yes. No change to guidance at the bottom of the page. You'll see it looks like it's going up from 5.7 to 6. We took 0.3 out of your general ed budget last year because we knew we were getting a grant, and we ended up reducing the expenses and the revenues. You and I don't know about that. Currently, it's I'm gonna show it in both that full person in both expenses and revenues. We can revisit that as we start getting some of the other numbers like your tax rates.
Okay.
And you're gonna see that same thing when we get to the high school, where it was shared between the 2 schools. Page 4, going through quickly, no change to health, library, or technology. You see in the principal's office, it's going down from 7.0 to 6.0. There's a retirement on the support staff that we're not anticipating filling. No changes to plant at the bottom of that page.
Okay.
And then the contracted service at the very bottom of page 4 is your SRO. And we'll also be counting that as an FTE in the Richford budget now as well.
Right.
So page 5, no real changes other than a little bit of movement in the pairs on that special ed line. And so if we go down to that last line, it looks like we're going from 79.6 to 80.9. Those changes again are cutting a half-time out of the middle school and moving that to grants. Addition, capturing the school-based behavioral consultants. So adding an FTE to that, adding the 0.3 of the SAT FTE back, adding one support staff position, accounting for the SRO, and about just under a half of an additional para overall.
Okay.
I think you had some folks who are very part-time, who are now less part-time. Page 6 starts Richford Elementary. So the first section is pre-K. There's no change to the teachers there. You still have 2 full-time teachers in pre-K. The drop in your FTE at the elementary school is primarily because I had 2 people budget at the elementary school who were supposed to be at the high school. Because of staff changes where I sort of got that we were moving them, but I didn't get the funding quite right. So you're gonna see 2 added when we get to that section of the budget.
Okay.
Drop a couple lines down, there's a 0.2, as we call Justin a SBDC, behavioral consultant.
No, he's a school-based clinician, he's not a
School-based
behavioral
clinician.
consultant.
So a school-based clinician that ended up replacing one that had been fulfilled by NCSS. And then the 0.5 is Laura McGraw, who has for a while been half in grants and half in your local budget. We're just putting an FTE to that.
Okay.
Bottom of that page, no change to guidance. On page 7, no change to health, library, technology. Technology is still a shared position with the high school. No change to the FTE for principal, and no change to the FTE for plant. Page 8, if you go in the middle of the page, you'll see some of that shift between general ed and special ed with your parents, but there's no other changes there.
And the shift again, let me just reiterate, is that it's paras doing work with regular ed and that's why it's moving over here.
Right, so we're making a guess now, which is really
Okay.
based on last year,
Okay.
about what percent is special ed, what percent is regular ed.
Okay.
And then we carry that forward in the budget, and it's gonna change 2 times this year, and then probably once before we start up.
Okay.
So there's a bit more movement on this one. Addition of 0.2 of the school-based clinician who had been in the building already, 0.5 of McGraw, who was in the building already, taking out 2 teachers who were never in the building. And then it's an additional of basically a para and a half, 1.6 paraeducator from the previous budget.
But there are more paras in the building budget than there were last year. At
At
the elementary.
1.6.
Oh, but you just said that it was.
A 1.6 increase budget to budget.
Okay, I thought you were saying from special ed to regular ed, that's not what you're
No.
saying. Okay, all right, I just wanna understand
Yep.
what you said, all right.
Richford High School starts on page 9. Again, the 3rd line down, you'll see that SBC, and the 4th line down, you'll see the interventionist position that they're sharing with Enosburg Middle School.
Okay.
In guidance, there's a 0.3 increase, again, that's due to not putting that person in the grant at the moment. Health, library, and tech don't change at all. Principal plants don't change at all, and then under contracted services, we've added a 1.0 for the SRO position. Bottom of that page is your special ed paras. Page 11, I knocked down your AD from 1.0 to 0.2, which is just more accurate in terms of the time he spends. So middle of that page, overall, it looks like you're up about 2.6 FTE. Again, there's a lot of movement. 2 teachers that I didn't have in your per budget last year. SRO, 0.3 of a staff counselor, the 0.5 interventionist position, the school-based clinician, which we had as a contracted service, and then reducing that is dropping the AD by 0.8, and it's actually, there's a little bit more than 1 para that's been cut budget to budget.
So just to clarify, the only increase is the 0.5 person that we're sharing with Enosburg. Everything else was really there, but in a different way.
The 1.5 increase and then the 1.1 decrease. Those are the ones that really are something other than a budget change.
But
yes.
Okay. So para decrease overall.
Para decrease. Okay. Bottom of page 11's the school board section. There's not a lot there yet. Nate's section for public starts on page 12. Throughout his, there are only 2 changes. One is halfway down. We've moved 0.5 of his special educator from grants into the local budget. He's always had a 1.0. Last year we were able to split it 50-50, and there's apparently a time limit on that grant, and he's not allowed to include him in the grant this year. I haven't budgeted anything for adult ed. Brenda Westcombe has been putting in some extra hours to kind of do the paperwork for that program. I don't really know yet what kind of FTE that's going to look like, but it's going to be pretty minor. It's certainly not going to be more than the 0.12 that she had last year. And those are the only other changes, those are the only changes for me. So it's kind of fast.
No, that makes sense.
And go back to anything.
Questions, comments? And we're gonna run through this again next.
We will run through it again. I know there are conversations happening between principals, and so you may come back to one where we've got some new proposed positions in the budget, or
Okay.
coming to you with kind of a wish list of,
Okay.
depending on where the numbers that start dropping out of the state in December
Great.
fall. Do we have room to make some other moves in this budget or not?
Okay. And remind me again when we sit and do our budget crunch time, December, are we gonna have to do that?
I will bring this back for your regular December meeting.
Okay,
Richford's not done the crunch time the way that Enosburg has done the crunch time, so
Oh.
you guys get to have a discussion and, say if you wanna have a separate budget meeting at some point during the day, with everybody in. If you wanna get through your December meeting first and see where things
we're at.
land there,
okay.
it's completely up to you.
Look at me.
Go through the December meeting, see where.
Do you see where we're at? Yeah, I think that's wise. Yeah, okay. All right, what else you got?
I think everything else is informational.
Student tuition?
Yep.
All right,
It's in the report.
okay, great. So now let's go to principal's report, start with Kelly.
So before we
Oh,
start,
okay.
Based on some of the training we had at the VSBA, now I'm doubting myself, but I think I have talked with most, if not all, principals about some shifts in principal reporting. So we're, in order to be as efficient as we can with our time, because we recognize these meetings are going long, the principals are making sure that you have a board report in your packet.
Right.
And they're going to, if you have questions about the board report, they'll receive those questions. And the only thing that they're gonna bring to the table are action items for you. So please know, since we had our training, I haven't had my principals yet. So we're gonna be talking more about this together next week, but have I made it to everybody? Okay, good, so glad none of you look surprised.
I think you told us at that budget meeting.
Okay.
How do, I don't wanna overstep, but how do you feel about that? Cause I didn't wanna send the message that we didn't want to hear from you, cause we love hearing about everything that goes on in your buildings. But like efficiency, like for your sake and everybody else's, do you feel okay about that? Okay, good. All right, so do you have any Kelly, you have anything?
I don't have any action items. Both of the items in my report are informational. However, one thing was not included that I would like to give you, which is the letter that I sent out regarding the second item regarding facilities. Because we did have to report to the community regarding lead testing again.
Yep, okay.
So I would like to pass these around. So I did send a letter out to the community, which outlines all of the actions that were taken in the past and then again this year.
Perfect. Okay, great. Anything else, Kelly? No? You're good?
Sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
ask her about the second testing.
Because we've done the lead testing.
Yeah.
And I've never gotten anything that I know about. Okay, you'll talk about it later. Okay.
Okay. No news is good news.
That's fine.
Yeah. Beth, do you have any action? No? Okay. And Michelle?
I don't have any action.
Okay. And?
We're not talking to anyone.
We're not talking, yeah, exactly. You're on our list. And Joseph, do you have anything?
I just have, yes, I have,
Oh, sorry.
personnel.
I jumped.
Rachel is first.
Rachel's first. I couldn't find my
only have one
list.
personnel thing, and that
Okay.
is relatively minor. Sam Fletcher is going to have a baby sometime in February. She insists that it is not coming until February break, and then
Good luck with that.
I don't know if you get to control that.
Nope, you don't.
But I will be posting probably this week for a long-term sub for math. She plans to come back after April vacation.
Okay. Great. And we had the gender reveal in your video. Does she have a girl or?
It's a boy.
No, but.
Oh, she already has a boy.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Oh, 2 boys.
It's 4 tries to get a girl.
Okay.
Oh, is-
I will let her know that. But I think she was very.
That's terrible. Okay, and now Joseph.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, I have a, just in personnel, a letter of resignation, which is actually, Ann Loisel is retiring after 30 years. She is, special education support staff.
Okay. So do we need to again accept?
I think it's nice.
Nice,
to
right,
do that
okay.
and put that in your
Right.
minutes. Thank her for service.
Right, so do I have a motion to accept Ann Loisel's resignation and thank her for service?
I'll make the motion.
Kevin, do you have a vote?
Yes.
Okay. Pam? Yeah. Yes? And Rick?
Sure.
There you go. Thank you, Ann. Okay, was there anything else, Joseph, or you're good?
That's it.
Okay. And Nate is not here, but do we have anything?
Nate shoveled more than he should have today.
Oh, he hurt himself, did he?
He did not have any action items they told me about.
Okay. Okay, So, I guess we're going on to board business. So there's a set future agenda items. Why don't we move that towards the bottom? So we can have that as our conversation. Stormwater permitting. So, the state of Vermont has required, that any, school business that has, a certain area of impervious, area. What's that?
Impervious material?
Impervious material. Impervious area, so it could be roofs, parking lots. So if you have an area that's greater than a certain size, you basically fall into this bucket of you need a permit for the Clean Water Act that they're doing. So Enosburg is on, this building is on that list. And so the state of Vermont has drafted permit requirements. It's in draft form right now. For people, draft requirements. So, let me see if I'm getting this correct. So, I reached out to the state of, some people in the state of Vermont to see if there's any grant funding in order to, if we have to do any kind of remedy, would there be any money from the state to help with that? Because I know that there was a huge pool of money that when this came down the pike, a while ago, that they said that they were going to offer up pools of money. So, they asked if because we had to do a permit, if we would be interested in, let's see if I'm gonna get my information correct. Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong. Information in the fact that we would be kind of the, pilot, thank you. It's like a pilot, where we already know we have to go through the permitting process. Basically, they are going to kind of walk us through the process. And in going through the process with them, that we could be open to monies to help fix that. And so they basically asked if we would want to participate. And I said potentially yes.
So just our school district?
So it's actually just this this campus.
So it's just this campus?
Correct.
Okay.
Just this campus.
Which
And
includes the elementary school?
which includes the elementary school. It said the Enosburg School District previous. I believe it's this campus, and it's just the stormwater systems that we have here. So for instance, if the minute it hooks up to Village, then it stops. See what I'm saying? So it's just basically.
It's where you're pushing your stormwater runoff, right?
Correct.
That they're asking you to.
Right.
Have these permits for.
So we have to have, for this location, have to have a permit. Which makes me wonder when we did the renovation, what kind of permitting? Anyway. Yes. So we have to, so they're gonna come in, when we apply for the permit, they're gonna come in and basically say whether we're in compliance or not, and if we're not in compliance, this is what you have to do in order to be in compliance. And so if there's something that we have to do to be in compliance, by going through the kind of this process, we could be open to grant money to fix it.
Is there any way we can argue that we should be exempt?
No. No. How would they be exempt?
I don't know. I don't know what the criteria is for saying that we have to have one.
So it's basically, I think it's 3 acres. I don't want to say number. I think it's 3 acres.
So if we had a grass strip between the two complexes here?
And not turn, and so if we basically tore up pavement and then made not impervious, I see what you're saying.
I mean, yeah.
But I think any development at this point, I don't know, that's a good question. Those are all good questions.
I mean, I don't know how they determine, you know, because again, it doesn't make logistic sense that, you know, you have a Richford High School and a Richford Elementary School,
Right.
which probably have the same footprint on the planet as
Right.
these two buildings together.
Right.
And yet they're exempt and we're not exempt. So I don't know what the criteria is. If they,
Right.
Your sites are different though.
Yeah.
Your sites are connecting.
I know, but I don't, I mean, that's what I said, if we had a
Right.
grass strip between the two, you know.
And roofs count as well, like so, just square footage of roof space, like
Gravel.
different, gravel, exactly, all of that. But, so yeah, no, I know.
I think what Rick is saying is, can we split this into two campuses by one more width of grass between them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the
Right.
criteria.
Oh, I
don't
see
know if
what
they're
you're
under
saying.
3 acres.
But it's all pavement, would you be able to do it?
It is right now.
So I don't think it's
Some
the
of it's
three,
gravel.
my
Oh, yeah,
impression is
some
it's
of
not that it's 3 acre size wise, it's
No.
how much impervious
Yeah, 3
material you
acre of
have
impervious.
on
Exactly.
whatever your footprint is.
Exactly.
I know, but I don't know what they consider I don't know
Like
what
if,
they consider a footprint. I don't know what their definition of footprint.
I mean, we also don't know how much over we are.
Yeah,
Right,
but I mean,
right.
maybe it's the,
right,
You have
I mean,
lot of
a
gravel
list-
down there.
maybe it's the
Right.
gravel down there that put us over too,
Right.
you know, so I don't, I
and
mean, I
the-
don't know, but
right.
I'd like to know what the criteria is to be
Yeah.
included.
A list came out years ago and basically from the state that said these are the places that are gonna be impacted, and the list was long. Lots of schools are gonna have to do this at their own expense. So.
So what are they asking you in terms
So
of?
they're basically just asking for interest. Would you be interested? So we are in no way committing to anything. They're basically, would you be interested in maybe piloting this permit process? Because it's in draft form right now.
And if we don't, I think is what Rick's.
If we don't, we're still gonna have to do the permit. It just might be at our own expense. We're gonna have to do the permit. State water, storm water.
Did they give you a timeline, when we need to do that?
Well, it's in draft form now, and they said until November 15th, they were taking questions until November 15th. I had been asking some questions. They got back to me about that, and then, and they did say that there might be some places where we would the permit would be co-applicant with the village, depending on what the situation is. So November 15th was the questions. I don't know when the deadline is.
How much capacity does the village have, you know?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Good question.
I need to know I need to know the criteria.
Other than the 3 acres of impervious.
Yeah, I need to know what that means.
So anything that water can run off from and not drain.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I need to know, again, if we put
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're
6-inch
saying.
wide grass strip somewhere, can that exempt us from that?
I see what you're saying, from the stormwater plan.
What are they asking you to do from here? Are you asked to commit to them by the November 15th?
No, they asked, would you be interested, do you have any interest at all in what this might offer for you?
Could we say we have interest, but we want you to come and answer our questions?
Yes, please.
That's exactly what I said. I said,
Okay.
we have interest, but we have questions. Yes.
Would he come?
Oh,
So
yeah.
my
No,
guess is it's
yep.
probably Tom Benoit
No,
for Berkshire.
it's not.
Tom is someone who does this work, I wonder.
His name was Chris.
Okay.
His name was
Chris Tomberg.
Chris Tomberg. Yeah, but he has been super helpful. He said, I've been checking out maps, like he's doing a lot of legwork for us so far. He's like, I'm gonna get the maps. He's like, again, this is in draft form, so I don't know what the end is gonna look like. But yeah, we could ask him to come in and answer some questions.
Agency of Natural Resources.
Agency of, did it say Agency of Natural Resources? Stormwater Management rings a bell to me. It's Chris.
DEC.
Environmental conservation.
Department of Watershed Management Division. Department of Environmental Conservation. There's the letter. So it has the address of 303 Dickinson Ave. So maybe it is just the high school. Anyway, there you go. So there's that.
You're right,
that's just
are
the high
you
school
going
address?
to invite them, or do you want us to take any of that?
What do you, what would you prefer? I can reach out
Why don't you
and
do that?
invite him.
Talk to him.
Okay. And see if he would like to come, what would make sense, not December. We don't have to do this for a while. Let me find out what the deadline is.
If it's after budget season, that would be great. If
Yeah,
it's not,
exactly.
then we
No, okay,
decide.
let me figure that out. Okay, let me make a note. Okay.
If this is gonna be a hit to your budget next year, it would be good to know that before
Oh,
you.
that's true.
Yeah, exactly. And it says 2020? Maybe it's in there, I can't remember.
So it says, also says we may need a permit.
No, we do need a permit.
It says we may.
I know, I contacted and they're like, nope, you're gonna need one.
Okay.
It's gonna fight it.
I know.
In his man, his
I
mind.
know. I know.
That's why I like it.
Okay, next was the Velco contracts. So I don't know if you remember a while ago, you gave authority for me to sign. Velco wanted an easement through some school property, and they're paying us for that. And so I signed that contract. But now Velcro, to follow up with that contract, I need to sign the closing documents that actually basically allows them to give us the money for this easement. And so I'm going to need authority to sign away from the table. They're sending that to me, if you'd like. Or I can bring it. Which makes me wonder about that property. But that's for another conversation. Like that property, it's a chunk of property and it's in the middle of the woods. But it's owned by the school. But anyway, there's a power line that goes through it. And they're not moving the easement. It's the same easement but they are re-recording it. And they're paying us for it. How much were they paying us again? Sorry. I think it's like 2,000, it's like $2,500, something like that. I have it somewhere. Anyway. So, what's your thoughts? Do you want to see the closing documents or do you want me to sign them?
I think you can sign.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Kevin, do I have authority to sign the closing documents from Velco away from the table?
Yes.
Okay. Pam?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Rick? Okay. Let me hand that back to him. Next. Update town plan. So, Regional Planning Commission has to update the town of Enosburg has to update the town plan. The Regional Planning Commission reached out and said, can you have the members of the school board update this information? Some of the information I have to update is school enrollment, so that's why I wanted that document. The other information, some of it will not change. It's when Enosburg first opened, yada, yada, yada. But there are some questions. For instance, that I had while everybody's here is, okay, does the elementary school, Michelle, still have the Oasis program?
No.
No, okay. So, and the Castle program at the high school still exists?
Yeah, it's called Core now.
It's called Core, okay. And, called Hollow, I think. I think everything else was just data regarding enrollment. And then of course, they'll add a section about the merger. Okay. Okay. Next is the snowmobile ATV use on school grounds. So the student came to us with a request last time about driving ATVs. Did everybody get that information from, was it Lynn or Morgan about,
Recommendations.
Visbit gave the recommendations about, whether that was good practice or not. Did you get that?
Missed
Yes.
that.
Yes, they did.
And so, do we have a decision?
Well, it sounded like it wasn't gonna be a good idea.
Right.
Right, Morgan?
Certainly, not according to this bit.
Yeah. So, according to Visbit's recommendation, I think we don't allow it at this time. What do you think?
I'm off or no.
Okay. Okay, do we need a motion for
That
that?
was snow machines too, I would assume.
I don't remember what the.
Because do kids now
We asked for
take
ATV slash snow
snowmobiles?
machine, I feel like, when we sent that.
I haven't allowed either,
Uh-huh.
because when I was principal of Montgomery, there was a policy that said that, so when the kid came and asked me,
You could
I
just
looked
say,
for the
right,
policy,
right.
and that's why I asked Lynn and Morgan, because I know that we used to have a policy.
Because it was a non-required, remember we.
Yeah, I think we got rid of
all
a
the
lot of the
non-required.
non-required ones.
I think that Visbit's recommendation was about both ATV and snowmobile, because what they were talking about is, just the safety concern. that,
Right.
You know,
Right.
kids are driving them and they're probably, some of them, either if they're gonna get hurt on the way to school or on the way back from school, or if they're gonna get hurt on school property, that it's liability that they were hoping and we were not going to approve.
So I wonder if we should, if it would be a good idea to have a sign. Because like Richford Elementary School, right there is the vast trail goes through, and so does the ATVs are on that trail too. And I've had to ask several kids not to have ATVs at the elementary school this year because we use that field.
Oh, right.
So they were there at soccer games, or on 2 occasions, I asked kids, I said, you need to not have, I said, could you just move it to the border of the property? Because until I get a ruling, you're not allowed to have it on the ground. I wonder if it'd be a good idea to have signs that say no ATVs or, on school property.
Lawyer didn't say anything, or Visbit didn't say anything about some of this. It's just ATVs.
Just ATVs?
But I feel like a lot of that was about roadway. Wasn't there a lot of roadway?
Well,
or-
that's because the ATV is not supposed to be operated on.
Right, so I'm wondering if you could use the same argument for the snow machine.
Well, I think the snow machine, we don't use on pacers, that's very long.
Very long.
You know, snow-covered surfaces, yes, but not, you know, it's so that it's a safety issue with the ATV, whereas with the snowmobile, it might have like. I'm still no, but.
Yeah, right, okay.
You're a no for both?
Well, that's my initial.
I mean, the other thing that you contend with too is you don't have to be very old to drive an ATV. And I think what they're asking for was permission to drive them to school. And then you have the issue of kids and ATVs and.
Collision.
Yeah.
It's a recipe
Well,
for
yeah.
disaster.
Yeah.
So I think.
Especially with the number of accidents in our community with kids.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we'll write a letter back to Kim and thank her for her presentation.
Yeah,
I'll
and she
write
did
it
a
on
very
behalf
good
of the
job with her
board.
presentation.
Did a great job, but we're regrettably not going to be able to approve her.
Because of safety issues as advised by.
Something that should be pushed to the policy committee and get something that principals can then point to.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one to have, because I went right to the book when the kids asked me and it wasn't there, or right to, and then I went online.
Right. Okay. So, anything, do we need to do anything else with that? No? Okay. Articles of agreement, grade configuration language, amendment consideration from March vote.
I told you last time that I would put it on your agenda, so that if anybody from the public wanted to come in and have a conversation about it. I made copies of the language as it existed in your original articles, and then the language, Morgan has a way of being concise, it's a man of few words, but what he says is powerful. So he took our 4 paragraphs and he made it into 1 sentence. So the board, I think you all took a look at this in the last meeting and you asked us to say what the sentence was, and it's here in front of you for you to consider, and then we'll just need direction on if you're ready to move forward with that language at your March meeting. Or the March vote. Oh, Kevin, you probably can't read it.
I can't.
Oh,
I could text it and scan it to him.
No, great.
Oh, wait, I can email it to, I can,
Just take a picture of it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do, take a picture.
you gonna do it?
Yeah.
That's gonna text you.
I think it
My
works.
kids would be very proud of me, my own personal children.
Good thinking.
So
Except you're holding the phone weird, Mom.
Yeah, I know.
I know when I text on.
You're supposed
and-
to text with your thumbs.
I know, I can't.
Hold the phone the other way, Mom.
You know how you do
She's
that?
got a hurt shoulder.
I think I do.
Very well.
Do I? Oh, no, I don't.
I still can't, even if my children try.
So no grade shall cease to be offered at a time without I think that makes sense. That was easy.
Hey, I got it.
Yeah, because we don't need to say about the whole grade configuration, because it basically just says you can do
Right.
whatever you want, you just can't cease to offer one.
Yeah, very, very well done.
I think you scored a 4 for clear and effective communication. Okay. Kevin, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I just spoke at your discussion. Solid platform. I think it covers everything.
I think it does too, like I was trying to see if there were any holes, but I think it does cover everything. Okay. Set future agenda items, is there anything else that we need to do?
Not for future, but I do have something that I need to tell you under other. in
Okay.
Executive.
In executive, okay. So, can you, I think budget's gonna probably be our next
Majority
agenda. Potentially, stormwater, but I'll see what I find with that.
Yeah, sometime we need to go over the online information stuff.
Oh, you are at FNESU meeting. You would have had it last night.
Okay,
The snapshot?
yeah, we're not doing that.
No,
We're just gonna
we're
do it.
doing SU.
Okay.
Okay.
I figured this one was probably gonna be.
Yes. Okay, so, we have other,
So could I just want to, I need to keep Kelly and Beth.
Okay.
And Morgan.
okay.
We can cut the rest of the people loose.
So do I say executive session
To
or?
discuss, that the board moved into executive session to discuss personnel.
Okay, so a motion to go into executive at 8:17. Right, here's motion.
I'll make the motion.
There you go. I need to roll call Kevin, executive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.